Dames en heren, we gaan de laatste fase in van ons symposium, of de laatste althans. En we hebben dus dit speciaal ingelast om al uw ja maar ook misschien van verschillende visies op het feit wat u gehoord heeft de gelegenheid gegeven om daar van gedachten over te wisselen. De workshopleiders hebben dus voor het diner, om zo te zeggen, een overzicht gemaakt. We hebben een PowerPoint gemaakt met een aantal stappen erin. Overeenkomstig de 2 en 3 workshops die we gehad hebben. Met dus de op- en aanmerkingen. En we zullen dus eigenlijk de revue laten passeren. En daar dus u de gelegenheid van geven om daarover te praten. Maar ook dus uit de kant van de workshopleiders dus de gelegenheid geven van hoe dat dus die visie zou kunnen zijn vanuit de theosofie.
It's about the view
Dus ik zou eigenlijk
you
willen
could have from
verzoeken om de
theosophy.
cursusleiders, workshopleiders, om die
So the
naar voren
workshop
te komen.
leaders are all coming on stage.
Nou, je zit hier dus eigenlijk
These were the questions
met elkaar hebben besproken in de workshop.
which we discussed in the workshop.
Je zit in een bubbel en je
Are you
hoort
inside a bubble and how do you
dat.
know?
Er zijn dus wat reacties opgekomen.
Some reactions were
Je
given.
gaat die eigen visie verdedigen.
You will defend your vision.
Je in staat bent om
You'll
een
feel
vraag te stellen.
resistance.
Als je denkt dat het vaststaat en
If you're not capable of asking questions, if you think you're fixed. So maybe you can all react to this. We have some microphones in the room, so and they can be used by you. So please ask your questions.
Door de microfoon. Voor mezelf gaat op dat ik constateer dat ik in een bubbel zit. Als mijn stemming.
I think I'm in a bubble if my mood is too hyper or I'm too enthusiastic. I think I'm a kind of God. Or when I get bad feelings or feel guilty about something and I'm not present. And it is usually after the fact that I feel this recognition of being in a bubble. And sometimes you can be in a bubble by indoctrination or manipulations. But I realize I'm out of my center. But usually after it's happened. And then I think, well, this was my bubble.
Workshopleiders daarop reageren?
Can one of the workshop leaders react on this?
Nou, dat was wel iets wat we meer hoorden.
Well, we heard that more often then. It's not often easy to recognize that you're in a bubble.
Meestal gebeurt als je iets ervaart.
And usually it happens when you experience something, when you mirror it with someone else. And then you notice it. If you think sometimes that you're the divine, and sometimes the more lower, maybe you have two bubbles, as it were.
We bouwen eigenlijk onze eigen bubbel op in die zin.
But the point is, we build our own bubble in this sense. One time you're this bubble, and the other time in that state.
Ik zit in een bubbel.
But not everyone said, well, I am in a bubble.
Naar aanleiding van reflectie of een ervaring.
You have to reflect on it, or experience some things. And experience another vision, or meet another vision. And it was not yours, but it made sort of a hole in the bubble.
Ja, wij zitten ook in een bubbel.
Yeah, we are all in a bubble.
We zijn nog een beetje stil, maar dat komt wel. Ja.
We're a bit quiet now, but that will change. Can somebody add to this? Okay.
Oké. Volgende vraag.
Next question.
Wat ook wel opviel, ik weet niet of dat,
Something else that we noticed.
dat we wel vaak zagen dat anderen in een
That we said that a lot of people see that others are in a bubble. Did you all experience that? On my work, I experienced that a
We
lot.
zien het wel, alleen dikwijls niet van onszelf.
We see it, but from other people, not from ourselves. That we have our own thinking patterns.
Nee, maar dat is ook deel van de definitie, want we hadden zo gezegd...
That's
als je
part of the
doorhebt dat je in een
definition.
bubbel zit,
As long as you recognize you're in a bubble, you know that there is a greater truth than what you know.
idealisme.
And that's objective idealism. But we had some discussions about this. And that was more about how to define the bubble, to see something and do not see the other side. And you do not recognize your own bubble. You only see what you think is true. Yeah, so you're locked in your bubble.
Je mag natuurlijk reageren als het niet zo
Of course you can react if you don't agree.
In reactie op wat jij net zei, zei ik mij net
To what you said,
als jij vindt dat iemand anders in een bubbel zit,
if you think someone else is in a bubble, you must be in a bubble yourself. It's logical. So if you realize that, you can leave your own bubble and ask the other one about his opinions and realize you're in it. What happens after that, that's now not of importance.
Dat was ook wel bij veel workshops die deelnamen. Ook die opmerking. Hè. Dikwijls ervaar je dat je in een bubbel zit dankzij.
So very often you experience that you're in the bubble because of your own thinking pattern. And then you realize that it has consolidated in some part. My experience is that people fear to make mistakes. And they tend to stay in the bubble because it's known, it's habitual, and there could be some danger in this. You were not in my workshop, were you? I'm not sure if we're talking about a bubble then. Do you fear anything? Yeah, you could fear anything that differs from the outer world. And then you don't wish to share your bubble. But I also know people that don't fear their bubble.
Ook nergens bang meer voor hoeft te zijn, omdat je weet wat je waard bent.
So you could realize that there's actually nothing to fear for because you know your self-worth. You receive the tools to make it practices.
Ja, maar leren dat het echt niet meer hoeft en ook niet meer doen, zijn er nog twee dingen natuurlijk. Hè?
But learning that you don't need to do something a certain way doesn't mean that you necessarily change it. Big laughter.
Je gaat je visie verdedigen of je voelt weerstand.
So you will defend your vision or you feel resistance.
Nog andere reacties?
Other responses?
We hebben nog meer plaatjes hoor.
There are more slides. Yes, over there.
Eigenlijk, als je het over die cursus anders denken hebt, dan
Talking about thinking differently,
zo'n fantastische bubbel, hè?
then is Plato's cave is also, you could also see that as a bubble. And when you would leave this bubble, you would develop a vision back to the bubble that you are known to, realizing that you don't know everything and that could bring you into a new bubble state. But it's a challenge to keep on conversating about this. So, how do you think about this panel? Well, actually, you're talking of one of the higher ideals within the Theosophy. And this is about the person seeking a greater truth. The person wishing to live from out of satisfaction, thinking he is released from old patterns. But the idea is to return to the rest of the people, to share your higher ideas, and to be an example for the rest of the people who have not developed themselves that far yet.
te laten leggen, dat gaat niet werken.
So it doesn't work
En dat het erom
if
gaat
you
om
confess
door
your
elkaar
bubble
iets te
upon
leren,
another
dus van binnenuit,
person's
zeg
bubble.
maar, het licht op te wekken en op te stoken, dat de benadering is. Maar dan moet je wel,
But
als
it's
je wat meer
about
gezien hebt,
inspiring
teruggaan
people.
om andere mensen te bereiken op de manier zoals ze het
But
kunnen
then you will have to stoop the people's levels to make yourselves understood.
van het wijzer worden dan
And that's
andere mensen op
part of wisdom.
De grootste bubbel is het gevoel
The
van
biggest
afgescheiden.
bubble is the feeling of separateness.
En als je dus uit de God bent gegaan.
And if you left that cave and you think you've left all the others, you just changed one cave for the other cave. Even though it seems a higher cave, but you can never get detached from the others who are still in the cave.
U ziet dat Plato nog steeds erg actueel
You see, Plato's still very actual and in the moment.
Ja, u noemt Plato, maar...
You mentioned Plato,
ik moet juist aan Socrates
but
denken.
I must think of Socrates
Socrates zei altijd,
if you
ik weet
mention
dat ik niks
bubbles.
weet.
Because he said, I know nothing.
Wat geeft Socrates ons eigenlijk...
So I wonder, what does Socrates give us for in kind of means to get us out of our bubble?
Socrates lijkt me ook in het bereik
We call upon Plato all the time, but Socrates is also very important. Well, if you want to know someone who doesn't live in a bubble, it is Socrates, because he didn't live in a bubble. He was constantly in a state of wonderment, in the philosophical sense of the word, as we said in our lectures. He asked with all things, what is it? What is behind it? What is the reality in it? What is the cause in it? He caused a lot of resistance with other people. That's something I wanted to add only. Yeah, he was the one who pierced through everyone's bubbles. And, well, it inflicted a lot of resistance. He wasn't popular. Socrates and Plato are not separate things. Plato knew Socrates when he was really young, and they shared part of their lives together. And after that, Plato founded a school, the mystery school. And he used the person of Socrates to make some ideas known for the common public, because they were deeper teachings, in order to make it understandable for a lot of people. And he made some... they both existed, but Plato used Socrates to make some thoughts clear. Because everything you read now, the dialogues with Socrates in them, is a veiled way to present those teachings from the mystery school. And that is one of the reasons that in the story Socrates is convicted. If you want to write a book on philosophy, please try to explain where Plato begins and Socrates ends, because you cannot separate them. Next question, or next slide. Oh. Oh. How to burst your bubble. That was an interesting one. And to see about the number of bullets, a lot of reactions came to that question. And the first one is the higher characteristics of thinking. Think about the sevenfold constitution that Mariska told us about, and we all received as a small handout. Also interesting, not from outside. between
Dan kan je natuurlijk
brackets.
wel even een vraag bestellen van
And
wat
you
is
can
dan
ask yourself,
bijvoorbeeld therapeutische consultant
what is the value of therapeutical
En dan zie
consultancies?
je eigenlijk dat zo'n therapeut
And you'll see that a therapist
aandragen, maar je moet
can
ze
give some
uiteindelijk toch zelf
ideas,
doen.
but the patient has to do it himself in the end.
Ja?
Yeah.
Wat ik heb gehoord van iemand wat me
What I've
vraagt
heard
is
from
dat
someone, which
is dat diegene zelf niet volbracht
that
uit
person
die bubbel gekomen en zelf
couldn't get out of his
niet
bubble,
volbracht uit die
and I,
bubbel
as
gekomen.
well, I experienced the
Het
same.
leven zelf dat brengt.
Life itself will bring that to
Haar
you.
en het bracht mij
And life brought her
daar
and me
in eigenlijk
to that
overgave in
way of
momenten van
thinking,
wanhoop.
and a kind of surrender in phases of despair.
De constructie van het gebouw wat je in stand houdt.
Like a building, the construction, you keep it in place all the time, but one time it collapses.
Als je kan toegeven aan die wanhoop, dan
But
ontstaat
if
er
you give
oneindig
in to the
ruimte
despair,
uiteindelijk. En
some
mijn wijze
space
is zonder bubbels. Ja, of het is een superbubbel,
will
maar
become,
dus dat heeft hij gedaan. Maar
there will be some room or space.
refereerde enorm aan mijn persoonlijke beleving.
And what that person said really spoke to me. That it is life itself that solves it. As long as you realize that life comes from yourself, flows forth from yourself. There's nothing on your path that is coincidental. It is seeds we have sown. And in the workshops that was also mentioned, you cannot get out of your bubble by someone from the outside. First you have to realize you're in the bubble. Next, how did I come here? And then work to get out of it.
So if you realize that you created your own bubble, you must also realize that you should free yourself from that bubble. And that's an important realization, and it's also a challenge. So it starts with acknowledgement, recognition, and then you could start working on freeing yourself from the bubble. So I have a question about the second point, stopping with thinking, question mark. I can imagine that there's a question behind this. You had the same question, stop thinking? Well, tonight we would like to stop thinking. This is a little joke. Well, the question, thinking about this, well, this was a remark heard more often during the workshop. What do we mean by stop thinking? So we are designed to be thinking, so we can't actually stop it. But if you think of the 7 jewels, you could think of giving it another position in the hierarchy. So in a certain way you could stop thinking by giving other people more space. So that doesn't mean that you should stop thinking tonight. Try it as an experiment. But you could change the way you think or your pattern. What it's actually about is that there's different kind of thoughts. There is the habitual thinking, so one thought calling up another thought, and that doesn't necessarily need to be enlightening for yourself. And it doesn't necessarily adjust to wisdom. There is a small story, 2 sisters, Martha and Maria. And they are putting this in perspective, and they're doing this through the Jesus Christ. One is focusing on the higher part of the Jesus Christ, and the other sister puts herself at his feet. And then this one sister opens herself for the higher influences, and then the lower thinking, desire, as one of the very main aspects of the lower thinking. That is the kind of thinking that we don't necessarily wish to eliminate, but we wish to be in charge of this kind of thinking. Yeah, we call this the manas, the different kinds of thinking, and we wish to elevate it to a higher level. So in our society, thinking is almost always being associated with intellectual thinking. But this is something different. It's one of the kinds of thinking that exist. And upon this, we are not very well known with this kind of thinking. I can imagine that there is sort of a mis-idea about this, because we're not very familiar with this kind of thinking. There is also a difference between the definition of this kind of thinking from out of society and from out of theosophy. So the thoughts from out of society are associated with intellectual kind of thinking, and the rest wouldn't be a kind of thinking. But what we call emotions or feelings are also aspects of thinking, which general society is not aware of.
So we don't stop thinking. Being unattached, letting go your personal truth. It can collapse by circumstances. That was a thought, the last sub-bullet. There can be circumstances in your daily life when, in fact, they shake you up, they make you awake. Must we say something about it? No, not necessarily. Maybe there's some reaction from the room. Maybe it sounds strange, but we experience it as very negative. But it can be very positive for your development. It depends on how you react to being shaken up. If you retreat, it's not that positive. But if something terrible happens and in hindsight nothing better could have happened, then that may be an opening for you. And you can progress, you make a step. And then you lose a bubble, as it were. Only the moment it happens, it can be painful. I heard something just about feelings. And sometimes I think I'm not going to do it because it doesn't feel right. And intuition is one of the higher thinking aspects. But what is the difference between those two, intuition and feeling? It's quite easy. I don't think so. I will try to explain you from Theosophy. The first is impersonal. There's no I in that. It is more an image, an intuition, a truth. A truth without consulting your intellect. And feelings, and they belong to the lower aspects. And the I always plays a part. It is based on emotions, there's no logic. We say the difference between intuition and a feeling, you can discriminate it based on the argument. If you have an intuition, you can argument why it is that way. There has to be a logic in it. If I cannot do that, then usually it is a feeling. So if I feel my neighbor isn't a good person, it's not an intuition. If I have an image of how something in the cosmos is ordered, or the psychology of humans, and I think this is really a truth, I have to think about it. Is there a logic in it? Can I recognize it? Can I explain it in a logical manner? And then it is an intuition. And if you train this, you can use it and you can rather quickly find out if it's an intuition or feeling. Well, I think they go together sometimes. Oh, that's no problem.
Gevoel en intuïtie kan natuurlijk in de praktijk samen.
Feeling and intuition can go together in practice of daily life. We wouldn't deny that. Only there's a difference in quality. Maybe, Barend, this process of having an intuition and arguing it with logic, there can be a time lapse between it. Maybe someone like Einstein. He had an image and he had to work on it a long while before he could show the logic behind it. Because mathematical relations, equations, he had to figure them out and he took a long time to do that. But feelings doesn't need to be conflicting with intuitions. Talking about harmony, those 7 aspects are in one line, in a harmonious person. Vitality, desire, they are all in line with the higher aspects. I noticed that it is difficult for me, the word thinking and impersonal. For me, it's always in the thinking is always something of the I, the me. It's hard to separate them. I understand that impersonal thinking, well, you will see the relations and connections more. But for me, it is still thinking. And there's always a piece of me or I in it. I cannot separate it as soon as thinking comes in the conversation. It is obviously different, but I will give you an example of intellect, because it's the lowest of the higher aspects. If a student of about 10 years is doing his mathematics or his English grammar and he thinks it's interesting and he finds it interesting, which it is, he doesn't think about I or me. He's looking, what does this formula mean? And he's so wrapped up in it, he doesn't know that that it's time to play and that he has a lunch break. This I or me doesn't play a part. The aspect above that, the idealism, there is even less I or me in that. Thinking is not always from the I or me. It is a division between the personal and impersonal thought. And that makes a difference if there is I or me present in your thinking.
And makes it more clearly. It sounds very logically, but it doesn't feel that way. But I try to be honest, says the questioner. Well, is this a feeling or an intuition? Asks Barend. But it's for me difficult to express, but thanks for the explanation. Herman, I think there's another aspect. If we think about the thinking process in which intuition plays a role, and you say, well, and you, okay, I'm busy with that, that does not mean the I is then the personal I who is busy with it. So if you go look to the process, it can take a longer time, and then you are busy with it individually. But during those time, you can be in the higher thinking aspects. So you see, do you understand? If you realize that you are busy with an impersonal process, for instance, when you are filling in the taxes form, but that doesn't mean that your lower I is also present then. It's not needed. If it's okay, you exclude it. I still wish to ask a questioner about the bullet, the bubble as a result of illness etc. can collapse, what you often see is that people are even deeper in their personal I, and a million of people are suffering for depression. It is a kind of we have a kind of desire to develop the impersonal I. But my question is, what can we, as pupils of Theosophy, what can we mean for the millions of people who do not know this and who do not have this intuition and who can get more and more in the depression and perhaps use medicines? What can we mean for them? That will come at a subject's depression, says Barend. Yeah, you're right. It can be that you, by a loss of someone who you love, that you go deeper in the problems, true. But it is also possible to come out of it just by that. But that may be the best to wait till we have that subject. Question? What I experienced? My thinking was for a moment standing still. It was absent. And that was, for instance, after a moment of stress, or another time it was a kind of landscape, a kind of winter landscape, and you saw the tree, and I saw a tree, and then at that moment my thinking stood still. Is that possible? Answer? If you have experienced it, then probably it is possible. You create your own reality, and you interpret certain the things you see according to your thoughts. So you get some images, you see that in your spiritual eye, and you interpret it that way. Okay, that can be. Yeah.
Okay, let's continue to the next bubble, wonderment, to be open. What should do? How and learn how to express the truth. So this is the element of wonderment, to be open and receptive, and to realize what you really are thinking. So wonderment is about the moment, is really in reality the most open moment you can realize for yourself. Look upon a situation and do not let loose all kind of prejudices on the situation. So that has to do with Socrates in relation to the Oracle of Delphi, where he said, which said that he's the wisest man in Athens, and Socrates in that situation asked himself, why does the Oracle say this, that I'm the wisest man? No, didn't take this as a compliment, but he was asking why. So he said, this is because if in my dialogues I take the attitude that I really don't know nothing and I'm open for all kind of arguments, and then you start those dialogues which lead to a certain deepening and a more thorough approach, and his opponents have a little bit of problems with that, because what you're really saying is that you do not have a profound knowledge on a subject. So this is a moment of wonderment. So this is one of the golden situations in which you can find yourself. So I'm not going to take the attitude, so I set aside everything I've learned so far. No, you use that, but you put yourself open and are willing to take an argument. So you're asking why is it called this way? Why does it work in such a way? So are there any additional comments?
lastig als ik nog iets moet toevoegen.
It's always difficult if you have to add something on what Herman has said. But so the last part of the sentence, it's not only staying in this situation of wonderment, but also to get the morality out of it. So it's more than just wonderment. It's wondering, think about it, and applying the thing, because that's the bottom line. So philosophy starts with wonderment, says Plato. If you're not open, then you are not able to take in a certain truth. So, and if you find this truth, then you should live up to it. So this is the situation and the order in which these things come. So at the end, after wonderment and applying, you get into the mystery. So this is a cycle we addressed 3-4 symposium back. So this is mysteries at the end of this line. And there are still some Lucifer magazines on this with the content on this symposium, so you're able to take this with you. But yeah, between brackets. So what's one of the elements in our session was, if you are aware that you find always a new truth, but it's only a relative truth, so then it turns into a continuous search for truth. So you have an understanding that it's an endless quest or search for looking for truths, because the truth is part of us but is boundless, and we are only able to learn more and to get a better understanding of those truths, and are growing in our ability to express this truth. Next one. Okay. If you realize that everything is one at the end of the day, then all different kind of bubbles disappear and dissolve. So I see thoughts. If you realize that we are all one, then there is no bubble of the other, because then you are not in a bubble. Some people think that applying meditation like mindfulness, and then you're approaching the lower parts of our consciousness, and then you think you are one with those lower parts. So people who are meditating do think themselves that they're working on their bubbles, but in our Theosophical way of thinking, we try to control our way of thinking, so that if we are able to control those lower aspects, then there's room. We create a room for the higher elements of our thinking to pour in. So starting meditation as such is not a solution, but it's only starting element. So it only is helpful if it gives you the ability then to address more philosophical aspects in your thinking. So if you're more or less accustomed to it, then you can do that everything. You don't need a special room or special place, but you can do that everywhere, even in a train or on your way to work. For me, that's a little bit more difficult, says Barend. But if you're looking into a candle and wait what's coming up, that's not what we understand by meditation, but it's consciously building on a certain picture. So if you only look on the physical aspects and use it to look into the kingdoms of nature and how everything works together, then this gives you already a kind of an impression of how everything works together. and everything is interwoven into one unity of life. And if you try to carry that for 24 hours a day, so we call this idea of universal brotherhood, because everything is interlocked with everything, then meditation is the best way not to get confined into a bubble. But more interesting is that this is also a very profound way to contribute to a better world.
Okay. Yes, go ahead. I have a question. When you realize that everything is one, that you really are the other, and I wish explanation of that. We are in essence one, but we still have our own character, our own development, and build up our own karma. So I do not understand fully the idea of oneness. But yet you are not the other. Answer, you can compare it with a tree. A tree has many twigs and trees and leaves, but all those things have the same source, the same roots. The whole cosmos was in the ancient times was imagined as a tree with roots in the heaven, and we are all component parts of that tree. So we are one. Brothership is a fact. It is the idea of objective idealism is when we add reality to the idea that we are separate, then it is for us real. But when we really know that we are in essence one, and that we are parts of one, then we will see that. Yet we have our own character. We are not the same, but we are equal. The same life in fundamentals. Perhaps the next slide. Now we will have the theme depression. Do you recognize the causes of depression? We gave you a handout with a few thoughts about it. And so this was the reaction. Yes, by other symptoms. Yeah, Barend. Okay, some people said that the causes were symptoms. What is symptom, what is cause with these things? Some people thought you can think both. That what we have called causes, in their eyes were symptoms, or the other way around. Was there some question about it? Perhaps we can go to the next slide. So we wait for a moment. Here. The next slide is about the triggers. The triggers is not the cause. For instance, divorce, or when you lose your job and you come in a depression, those are the triggers, but this is not the cause. We call it a trigger. And at that moment it could start, it could express itself, but the causes were deeper. If someone had felt connected with all life and he uses his free will, so I came in it so I can also go out of it, then it would be possible. So this is about the real causes. And we can, you can see it in this way, says Barend. Everyone has a few latent insights, latent characteristics, which are not expressed. Yeah. Because you are in a certain situation, then those latent aspects come above, come to the outside. But when you look to two colleagues in the same firm who have the same situation, they lose both their job. One gets a depression, the other not. So that means that the loss of the job was a trigger for one person. Yeah, that his latent problems came out, and the other person had not developed those problems, and it was had another other effect. So, in fact, the truth is that the real causes are not outside, but they are in a layer deeper. Yeah, another question?
Dat was die we opgezomd hadden. Je ervaart je eigen hogere bewustzijn.
You experience not your higher thinking aspects. You do not experience the connections with other people. You do not experience your free will, and you have unrealistic expectations. Those were the four causes that we wrote down. Yeah, question? What I missed as a word is, in my experience, that about depressive persons around me, that I heard about what they told, that there were longer periods in which they, yeah, what I experienced with a brother, okay, they ontkennen.
So it looks like that, to my idea, that negation of your environment can contribute, and you on the idea that if your surroundings, the people around you, are not able to welcome you and they negate you, then there's a very fundamental capability in a person to accept life. So this has happened with a number of persons. So it might very well be the situation that because if you could have the idea that this was already in the person in a latent, in a not active way present, and was it not only the trigger which brought it up and brought it outside to the in the external situation. So now in talking about karma, so on the basis of in the past you might have laid the causes for this. So I think it's kind of a sort of a group's dynamic which can bring up very helpful insights, but some people, like my brother, this wasn't fruitful for him. Yeah, you should have brought your brother then here to this place to have hands-on experience. What you just said touched me very much, because I'm getting emotional, so I think it's very hard to say, but okay, this really touched my heart. Other reactions? Additional?
Je krijgt een microfoon.
No, okay. Mic is coming your way. I do agree with what has been said. I have very often noticed how such a progress takes place, and so it was explained by this gentleman. I think he does this very well, and I've really experienced that the process takes place in such a way. But I myself am strong enough to overcome this all, and Theosophy and other very great things are a very great help for me, and it is indeed that the process takes place in such a way. It's so he should have brought his brother here.
Okay.
Hij heeft in ieder geval het voorbeeld gegeven.
So he has indeed given the example.
Was het moeilijk voor u om zo ver te komen om dit uit te dragen?
Was it difficult for you to be able to bring this forward? No. Barend said no. That wasn't a great. Wasn't very difficult. So if I'm able to explain it in a certain way, that it's not difficult. It's a little bit different. It's a better word. Because sometimes in society we find another way of thinking in society, but it's much easier to my experience, and it makes also things very much easier to understand than if you take another starting point. There are so many synonyms, and then you're using the wrong word, so it looks like kind of explaining texts and words. So sometimes you don't know the real meaning of some words, so that makes it very, very complex. If you want to make something clear, then it's very complex to find the right words to make your way of thinking clear. So we had the same thing in our workshop. I cited a certain Zen master who said, if you want to catch fish, then you need a bait. So if you had caught fish, you don't need a bait anymore. So here's the same thing. Which person can give me words and offer me the words so that I'm able to communicate with people? So what we are doing here is using the knowledge to transfer thoughts one way or another. So it has nothing to do basically with the words. It's the thoughts which count, and we help each other to make the thoughts and the way of thinking clear, and then the words are not so very important. And from time to time, in the preparation of this symposium, we had very intense and long discussions, just because we needed a lot of words, a lot of time to make very clear what we wanted to express, because words are something inadequate and are not able to express what we really mean. And I do agree with you that it is difficult sometimes to find the right words to express thought and make it clear.
Passion is more important than words. Barend? In the longer future, we in fact do not need words to exchange thoughts. But happily it is still needed because I'm a teacher Dutch. Okay, Bouke. The point is to get a very clear image and then you will find the words, if you have it yourself. It is the insight which is important, and the words will follow. What you remark as someone who is really knows what he's talking about, then he can easily find a way to explain it. Yeah. Herman, on this issue, we have made the article in Lucifer about the mathematics of religion, and that's the point. How can you express the core to get a universal thought without thinking about all kinds of manifestation forms? Joop, in the old mystery schools, there people very often did not use words, but they used geometrical or other images, where are several significances to, and which they give hints that there is much more wisdom in it than at the first sight. So you had to think about it for many, many, many years to get more and more insight. For instance, the symbol of our society, the seal, and you can see it upwards, right the two triangles and the snake biting in its tail and the swastika, those are all images which about the processes which Mariska told as the three truths, like as above, so below, and cause and effect and cyclicity. And in the old schools, those things they used for the communication, not words, but give it in this way. And thus they gave truths. There are other ways to do it. And of course, says Bouke, the smileys and the thumbs at internet. We have the mathematics algebra, in which you make something clear without using words. A question? I wish to say something about the former point, the emotional negligence. You have a relative depression, for instance by a divorce or someone who's died. But you have also emotional, when you have too less emotional care had. But about the sharpness of your answer. If I look to your answer with my knowledge of theosophy, there is a panoramic view. When you are in your birth, you come into a family to which you feel attracted by the karma you built up. Well, can you say a little bit how this relates to the causes, the four causes that you defined? About the causes of a depression. Then I would tend to conclude that 1 to 4 are results of the fact that you are in such problems that you cannot come to those higher thinkings, etc. And Theosophy says, no, these are the causes from the karma you made. Someone who says, well, this is a big answer. Barend, the point is, how does karma works? You are born in a certain period, in a certain surroundings, in a certain family. Just what we said in the morning, the cycle of thought, acts, habits, character. That leads that you will be born in certain environment. We did not set everything. For instance, the attraction to which you come to a situation is two. It has two poles, hate or love. You are attracted as a result of your own attractions. And I'm not able exactly to say why someone is born in a kind of family. And when it is a disharmonic situation, of course it does not mean that other people would also in a disharmonious way react. But the point is that someone is not by luck, by haphazard thing, came in that difficult situation. But think karma does never work one-on-one. It is also a totality of more human beings, more consciousnesses, which are attracted to the situation. So the point is that we together must try to solve the situation. But when you look about the misuse of little children, it is never one-to-one caused by that family. It is caused by the whole country, by the whole mentality of a large group of people about sexuality, etc. So it means that we have to solve it together in large groups. And when someone has experienced such a very terrible incident, then we have the duty to help and to come and to grow out of that situation. And it is possible, but it is difficult. But we have to start somewhere. And when we start to stop the spiral downwards, but we start to think from compassion and wisdom to help with everything which we know, then we can make a start in the other way, the positive spiral. Yes.
what you're saying now, that sexual abuse of a child is the result of a total mental situation which we create together, all of us. And then I have the question, why this child? Yeah, okay, yeah, you can ask yourself, why are you born in a refugee camp in Somalia? Because in that sphere, in that domain, everyone has his own individual character, but in the past has put forward a certain cause which has led to the situation where he is now. So, but individual karma is not there. It's karma exists by the gratitude of the totality. So it's a whole process which is interwoven. So you can't say it's your fault, it's your karma, it's our karma. We have together created a situation, and individual causes are part of the overall picture and pattern. So we talk about pollution of the environment, but the pollution of the mental environment is much more worse than the pollution of the external, the outward physical environment. So if you think about which thoughts are thought by certain people, that you create a big ocean of mental waste, then the harvest is also predictable. So the solution is also in the way of thinking. So we should have better thoughts, so that would make us able to neutralize those negative thoughts. It's a little bit of a tricky question. In how much is there a focus with Theosophy on Marx Ultra? So no, the answer is no. It's Theosophy MK Ultra. Oh, you see. So, yeah, ze zei het. Yeah. Then Flip is promoting a Theosophical. It's an organization with sexual abuse and to program people, and this is used in the movie industry in Hollywood, and this is a very negative program. So if as humanity we want to contribute to peace and in general in the world, then for Theosophy this should also be a very interesting point of interest to focus upon. Okay, Herman, it's our work as a Theosophy, so we are working on a better situation in the way of thinking. So we have the attitude that thinking is free, and we have an approach of give free will and offer this as a basis for the Theosophical way of thinking. So we do deliver our contribution. So I want to react once more on the element of sexual abuse, because it's very heavy. So if I understand very little bit about Theosophy, and it's my understanding that some things have to overcome you because you have to learn about it, and it puts you give you the possibility to bring some things forward. But because you're abused, you get into a depression, and this gives a paradoxical situation, because on the one hand you must grow because of what you have to experience, and on the other hand you are not in the position to do so because you have this burden. No, it's not what you have to learn. You don't have to make yourself to put yourself in the mud to discover that it's not necessary to do so. But if it has happened, then these are the consequences. So karma doesn't bring us in a negative situation. It's a very neutral law of cause and effect. So you saw something and you harvest something. but we did create together in the world a situation where there's famine, there's child abuse, there's a lot of negative stuff in the world which we can find a solution for if we are able to give the mental atmosphere around the earth a different characteristic. So and it's indeed possible to do so, and therefore we have to think differently. And if this does happen, there are a lot of people in the world who think they're thinking independently, but they just take in all the thoughts which are brought to them. So if you sitting on the couch eating chips and taking in a movie with a lot of violence, then you are involved and you are strengthening a certain kind of thought patterns, and maybe you have you yourself are strong enough not to feel obliged to put it into practice, but your neighbor might react differently, and so. A couple of years ago there was a person in London who jumped out of a balcony because with a Batman suit on because he thought he was Batman. So sometimes we have created a picture where people really think that Batman does exist, and some people think it's a valid thing to do that just to bring to the door.
So, Herman? We have to go to the next slide. How do you help people that suffer from a depression? A very important thing. When we realize that we are one in the world, we are not loose, separate from all things which happen. And what can you contribute as positive help to other people? Awaken inner man. What do you want versus what sets you back? So address your own responsibility. What I often see, these questions are, you can post those questions, but the people have no answer for it. What do you want? People do not know it themselves. Herman? When someone is in depression, is what sets you back and what you really want, then there will be some emptiness, true? But it is the first step that you can make, that you try to form a thought about it. It can be a trigger to start thinking about it. And if it is simply I do not want anything, then okay, then you can try to get them out of that idea. Yeah. Look, you can say someone is in depression and he has closed himself, completely closing in the society and in our philosophy is impossible, because that would mean that you are separate of the rest, and then you could not exist. So there is always a kind of relation or trigger where you can communicate with someone. There is always some kind of communication. And we know it is not a question of a few remarks and the problem is gone. No, it is a long-term process. We know that very well. But separateness in the absolute sense is not there. There is always a kind of trigger to find. Perhaps you must be very, very good in discipline to handle it, but it is possible, yes.
dan ben je, als je iemand kent
Yeah.
in die situatie.
When you know someone in the situation, you are the person who can be that line and have the contact. Herman, yes, that can be really indeed the situation. That you have a kind of other relation, another way of contact, and then you can come in instead of many other people around him. Yes, sure, that can happen, sure. You get the microphone. I wonder
Of de overheid
if
denkt,
the governments
zoals ik
think like me.
zo van, goh,
Hey,
dat we op dit moment
that we
zo
on this
ontzettend
moment
veel depressieve
there are so many depressive persons.
overheid vraagt zich waarschijnlijk nooit af.
I wonder whether the government
Dat zoveel mensen
really asks what are we doing wrong that so many people have that kind of problems.
als ik daarover nadenk,
When I think about it, I think it's difficult because I am not the government. I have no say in it. How do you think about it?
het zijn wel heel veel mensen. Als
We're talking about a lot of people only thinking about Holland. Herman, you know? In fact, we are that government. We ourselves, we are a democratic system, and we have a kind of way, our democratic way, how it. Then we have a responsibility for it. There is a process now going on, forming a government. But I think, and that's one of the disadvantages of the democracy, that many views in the society, enormous diversity of thinking, and of parties and of party programs, then you get not always the accents about the important problems like this. But you may say that depression is not only an unicum for the lower levels of the society, but also just in the more richer, more intellectual groups of people. I think it is a very diverse pattern what you see. But you can say, are we able to have an harmonious society that everyone can get his place in the society, the place where he belongs and where he can have a contribution. That's the point. I would say then we have to change our way of doing and also our way of stemmen. Voting. Yeah, our way of voting. Vote another party. I think. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I think we have a too complicated system of voting, so a lot of people are do not really understand the system. So a lot of people go from one place to another. Now it's also a question of how do we cope with such a situation. So we had a long time ago we have this situation that if you went to the voting place, then it was as a right with what's put in place after a long fight. So you dressed specially for the occasion. So you had then a 90% show up, and now we have 60 to 70% at the most. So it should be made mandatory. But whatever the case, you can make a laugh out of it. But I think that the percentage of depressed people is much too high, and it's still increasing and increasing. And not everyone is able to come into contact with Theosophy, and maybe if you get in contact with your general practitioner, then you are put in with other specialists. So one of the elements that we have organized this symposium, and we have worked for more than a year every Saturday morning on this, to be able to bring this kind of thinking and this kind of elements to make it able to spread out this kind of thinking. And on our site will be publicized the videos of this day, and we do hope that you in turn will use this knowledge in relation with your fellow men, so to to spread this way of thinking that there is a solution. Yes, I'm very happy and grateful that this information was brought to us. So, yes, we are really happy that we are able to spread out the Theosophical knowledge on this subject. Now the education. That's the next thing. Okay. Thank you very much. I really admire what you're doing, and because there is still a standstill in the forming of the government, can we go there to have a discussion there and to take it up at the root and and not on an intimidating manner, but just to bring it forward, to be helpful, and this is not to gain from it or for show off, but just to be supportive. Now maybe some people getting also depressive of politics, but we should realize that if a person gets into a depressive situation, that's not it's not on the fly, not on a very short notice that such things happen. That's a long coming period in preparation before such a thing comes in the open. So you need also time to react on this and to help to bring it back to the desired situation. So there are some people who pose a question and ask, so what is wrong in your life? What should alter so that you could get back into society? And then you don't and if you so you could be an example to help people to overcome their problem situation. And the people want really deep inside to get out of the situation. So you need to find the note which to press and get people involved anyway to get the connection once more with society. But having patience is a very important thing here. What comes to my mind is that's a kind of karma which we were just talking about. And people who are the group surrounding such a person, that we should stand around such a person, be kind and loving, and could practice so that we could do it all together, because it's a joint karma. So I heard a story about a person who was in a depression situation. He comes to the hospital and he sees there lots of people who have more or less the same thing, but who are also sick in a certain way. And after some treatments, I said, "No, I'm not the only one who is sick." And yes, says the doctor. And he said, "Could I maybe help one way or another to help?" And the physician said, "Okay, we always need not volunteers." And this person did it, and after 3 months he didn't have a depression anymore. So this was because this situation brought something out of his higher nature, which brought him back to the original situation. So people who do have the depression and it's caused by the situation that they have no real purpose in life anymore. And we're talking about doing this together, but how many people are there who the children are getting into depression, and the parents are a little bit helpless, while and nevertheless they have distributed in a certain way to the depression, to the children getting into depression. So on September the 9th, we all get the invitation. So there is this this symposium about what's the meaning and what's the purpose of life, and if you develop the idea of different lives and what is it all about, what's the cause and what's the purpose and the goal. And a lot of people really have no idea about it. They have this simple idea for you only live once and there's no purpose in life. And if that would indeed be the case, then you only come to the conclusion, get the most out of it. And then you end up in the lower aspects of thinking instead of addressing the higher aspects of your constitution.
Wat net hadden we het over dat mensen die depressie hebben geen perspectief hebben.
We were just talking about the idea that a person in depression don't have a perspective, and this is kind of a mountain which they have to overcome between them and their future. But on one level, in more in depth. And if you could ask such a person, if your depression would be gone, what would you want out of life? And then you get a reaction, yeah, I would like to do this or that. And then you change the focus more or less. So then you can address together the possibilities that are still ahead of such a person after they have overcome the depression. And so the view on the future is of major importance. Because if you're focusing on the one life, then you have to you're asking what can you get out of this one life. But if you have in this vision of more and more lives, then you have another attitude, and then you have a more complete picture. So, okay, Flip, you're already addressing issues of the symposium of September the 9th. So, okay. Okay. So,
I think we should thank the Forum. You can only read it in Lucifer, so equanimity. Yes, what was pointed out, how you can help someone in a depression. One thing you shouldn't do, don't go along with the depression, but be in an equanimity state. Try to live your own life. And what we're saying from those higher characteristics of thinking. One example. If you're used to go outside every day to be in nature, your partner is in a depression, he doesn't want to, or she. And you can help the partner. You can sit beside him or go outside. Or when I go outside, I bring this experience back to the partner. Stay in a calm situation, stay yourself, and try to help your partner from that state. Okay. On the folder, there's a crane bird. Where is it? What does it mean? Is there no deeper truth behind it? Well, it's a symbol. Especially in Japanese and Asian cultures, it's a very special bird. It has elements as reincarnation and return. In that way, this is symbolized with. And you also see it in Egyptian mythology. The phoenix is burned above the temple of, what was it? It flies above the Egyptian temple, and then it burns, and the ashes fall down, and from the ashes it rises again, a new phoenix. And also known from Harry Potter, of course. Hey, this one they recognized. Thank you all. Now we come to a conclusion. panel, thank you all. A few logistic things. Of course, we need some things before the videos are edited, but they are online in a raw form. So if you want to see everything, you can see the presentations and this forum discussion on the internet. The workshops were not filmed because it had some privacy elements in it. It will be recorded in our magazine Lucifer. And if you don't want to miss it, please let us know at the book tables. You can do that. And of course, the 9th of September, we start our new season with a symposium on the meaning of life. And this is a preview of what the new season will bring. And we can help you build your own view. And we have a nice something to do for you in the months of winter. Our course, Thinking Differently. You have tasted something about how it works and how we do it. The course Thinking Differently and the second course, Wisdom of Life. It will take some effort from you if you want to do this course. It is 14 nights in one season. It's really a course in about the practice of daily life. And of course, if you leave this room, you will find a bowl. And if you think this was such an interesting symposium, we should have more of these. You can contribute in a financial way to provide in the costs we make for every symposium. So for me, I want to thank you kindly for your cooperation on this day and all the thoughts and insights you wanted to share with us. And I wish you a good journey home, and we hope to see you at the 9th of September at the new season. Thank you very much.